Hello, this is Palico Padge and welcome back to another Sleepy Sunday Let's Play with the game The Away Team. Now last time around we were put to the test by this organism on this planet we found where it asked us to go and kill another said organism, and it turned out to be the same person, or same thing should I say, same organism. Why not? Same organism. It was very sort of Star Trek-y, the original series. It felt that way anyway. So, but we survived. Everyone is still hunky-dory. No casualties as of yet, which is good. Our food's okay and our fuel's okay. So we're in a pretty good position. And we ended up, at the end of the last episode, at Clark 67, which is this planet here on in. Now, let's crack on, shall we? So the summary of this planet is there are 7 planets in this system, and all of them are dead. The third one out appears to be the one most likely to have supported some sort of life in the past, but its atmosphere is gone, boiled off by the nearby star now cooling in its way towards dwarf status. A beacon from the planet's north pole begins jabbering as soon as the ship draws close, but it's going to need some decoding. Time enough to send a team down to the surface to explore. So, I guess we're going to explore then. Alright, so this time around we have the usual suspects. I think we shall be taking Cora as our leader. She does pretty well. We will then do Michael, who's our surgeon, as the medic. We then have Eric, who's our mechanic. So that's all the main parts covered. Now, we did take 2 extra people last time around. I think we're just going to take the one this time. And we're going to take Osmond Keenum, our farmer. Why not? He's strong, competitive, but he's also cautious. And sometimes you need cautiousness, I guess is the way to say that. You just need to not go gung-ho. So I think Fallen Stabler, our cyborg lady here, probably not the best person to take in. She's quick to draw the gun, but not quick to draw conclusions. So we shall crack on with those and see how we get on, shall we? The ship is going to need fuel if we're going to get much farther than this, you tell the crew. Even with enough catalyst fuel, the drive can only operate at peak efficiency if there's adequate dark matter for the conversion process, and this region of space appears to be a bit lacking. We're dead centre in a large bubble of true vacuum, I suppose is the best term, if not exactly accurate. However, possibly not coincidentally, sensors are reading the presence of a dark matter below the surface of this planet. This must be investigated. The crew doesn't exactly seem thrilled at the prospect of heading planetside after they check the readings. However, they're also somewhat eager to stretch their legs a bit more than the ship allows, and it doesn't take very long for the shuttle to debark. So, I guess I'll see you on the surface. After a short, uneventful trip, the shuttle lands beside a still intact geodesic dome right on the planet's equator. As there are no apparent signs of life or movement, the crew ventures out onto the surface. Inside an atmospheric suit, there is no imminent threat of danger, but it's probably not best for them to remain above the surface for long, especially since the planet has about twice the gravity of Earth, making moving about uncomfortable. There's some sort of structure that encircles the entire planet, you tell the crew. Based on the size and shape, it appears likely that it's some sort of particle accelerator, so it might be related to the dark matter readings. There must be some sort of elevator, seeing as it's about 10 kilometers below the surface. There might also be something worth investigating on the surface, but sensors show nothing special about other than that dome. Isn't it possible there is no elevator but some kind of teleporter beam? Asks Osmond Keenum. See, there's a reason we bought the farmer. I mean, we've run into some pretty advanced stuff so far. So far we have found nothing that was completely alien to human understanding, you reply. And human understanding is given to the general belief that teleportation is essentially destruction and replication, rather than movement. The first time you teleport, you die, and a copy of you is created. So until proven otherwise, I think it can be assumed that this would be known, and thus avoided. Osmond Keenum doesn't mention teleporters again. Well, who would? Who would? Who wants to die, and then be cloned and sent on again? Does consciousness carry onwards? You know, it's a deep subject. I think it's a little bit too deep for, a Sleepy Sunday Let's Play, but it's an interesting question. On the same. I think we'll have a quick look around on the surface and then we can always go down into the dome. Nothing of interest can be seen anywhere near the shuttle, and exploration is slow due to the planet's nearly 2 Gs of gravity. Very hard, that sentence. The terrain is almost impossibly flat and featureless, save for the nearby dome. Odds are good that there was a great deal of terraforming performed at some point on what seems a global scale. This would have been beyond the capacity of Earth civilization at its peak, even assuming complete cooperation and unlimited budget. The exterior of the dome appears seamless and bears no windows or doors, merely a single opening about knee-high and twice as wide. A gentle curtain of air blows from above the opening, acting as a barrier against particles from outside getting in, or perhaps vice versa. The structure appears to be made of some extremely lightweight material, either some either some unidentifiable alloy or some sort of plastic. It's a tight fit, but the away team is able to crawl inside the dome without incident. The interior has no artificial lighting, but the material is translucent and sunlight gives the entire room a warm, reddish glow. Oxygen levels in there are surprisingly close to optimal, you tell the crew. Still, I wouldn't go taking my helmet off if I were you. The floor of the dome is embedded with vertically orientated and quite shiny tubes of some indescribable colour, somewhere between violet and silver and white all at once. The majority of these, some 9 or 10 of them, are approximately a metre across, but the largest, in the centre of the room, is about 5 times that size. Each of them is about as high as it is wide, although it is safe to assume that most of their length is buried beneath the surface. Everybody in the pool. As the last crew member crawls inside, Cora Emma gets a little too close to one of the small tubes, causing it to emit a low hum. The cylinder seems to rotate in on itself, and a panel opens up in the side, revealing a hollow space inside. It's rather small, but theoretically someone could fit in there if they tried. So, what are these small tubes, or should we investigate the large tube? I suppose we better check to see what the small tubes do first. If we all go hauling into the large tube, and then find that the small tubes do something to propel us, which could cause damage or even death, then it'd be best to know about them first. So here we go. Each of the small tubes opens up in the same way when approached, sliding open to reveal a space inside. Although there are no buttons, sensors detect that there are hollow spaces beneath each one, suggesting that there's some sort of elevators or dumbwaiters. The tubes might be appropriate for young children, or perhaps small animals or drones, but they are clearly not intended for use by fully grown adults, and are probably best avoided. Fortunately, the crew agrees, and you don't need to tell them this out loud. The crew turns their attention to the largest tube, at the centre of the room. Like the smaller tubes, it opens up when it is approached, revealing a large internal platform with ample room for the crew. Though presumably intended as some sort of elevator, for either freight or human cargo, it has no obvious buttons or control mechanisms, but then, if there's only one place to go. Sensing no threat and seeing no other option, the crew gets inside the large tube, which as expected seals itself shut a few seconds afterward. A change in pressure and a slight draft can be felt as the platform descends rapidly, although atmospheric suits prevent any internal pressure changes and the crew remains unaffected. Surprisingly, as the crew descends, gravity seems to decrease to much more comfortable levels. Going down. The trip takes several very long minutes, at the end of which the tube slows and then stops. The side hissing open to reveal a large chamber filled with scientific equipment of some sort. Suit readings indicate that although their local gravity is now about 1G, there is a notable increase in graviton emissions from some nearby source, though it is not yet enough to hamper movement in any significant way. The crew gets out of the elevator before the door shuts again. The room is fairly well lit, although there is no obvious single light source. Colourful panels filled with shifting indicators and monitors fill the wall, along with an assortment of panels, both vertically and horizontally. There's nothing that specifically resembles a computer per se, but the crew gets the sense that this is, in fact, some sort of control room. Even though nothing is recognisable, it all seems familiar and somehow intuitive. It's immediately noticeable that anything resembling a monitor or other readout device appears to be tipped towards the floor at a rather extreme angle. The crew has to crouch quite a bit to look at these head-on, which is quite uncomfortable. Possibly these were meant to be viewed from a seated position, and any chairs once here were removed to some other room. So we can look at the wall panels, we can inspect the horizontal panels, or we can check the vertical panels. There's nothing which really grabs me to take precedence here, so I think we'll just go for the wall panels and take it from there. You instruct the team to begin by inspecting the walls more closely. The control mechanisms, if that's what they are, seem to be somewhat denser along the edges of the room. The crew can't make heads or tails of any of it immediately, but after completing a circuit of the room, a few conclusions can be drawn. There seem to be 3 distinct types of control consoles which repeat in sequence. Whether or not the like mechanisms control the same things or not can't be determined just by looking. But based on the simple iconography above each panel, it seems fairly clear that they involve opening something, turning something on, and deactivating something. There isn't enough information given to determine what the controls will affect, however. What would you like the crew to do with the wall control panel? We can open, power on, or deactivate, or just leave them alone altogether. Well, we should probably do it in order, so let's try the open control first. Nothing happens. Evidently something else needs to happen first. Okay, well, let's go back to looking at the wall panels again, and we'll try powering on. From somewhere beyond the walls, farthest from the crew, a gentle vibration rolls through the room. I'm reading some subsonic frequencies, you tell them. Nothing dangerous, but it might get uncomfortable. If you have to vomit, remember to use the funnel to the lower left in your helmet. The energy readings are definitely in line with what you'd expect a planet-sized particle accelerator might look like. You instruct the crew to make their way towards the vibrations. They don't seem too happy about this idea, but with no other option they begin to do so. So, because the power's on now. Do I want to open? Let's check the horizontal and vertical panels next before we start pressing any more buttons. The horizontal control mechanisms are not quite parallel to the floor, being set at more of a 75-degree angle, with the lowest portion connected to the floor by two slender beams. At first glance, the panels appear completely blank, but when the crew circles around the other side, it becomes clear that the controls are actually set underneath the panel, as if designed for something sitting on the floor, or someone very short. The iconography on the panels is as simple as everywhere else in the room. The buttons are labelled more with what could be described as pictograms, rather than letters or numbers of any sort. Unfortunately, the nature of these particular control mechanisms is not immediately obvious. The main controls appear to be used to adjust the sensitivity of something, adjust it from a low setting up to a high setting, with at least dozens of variants along the way. The dial currently points up, which would appear to be about halfway, but precisely what is being controlled is a mystery. It's probably best to leave this one alone. For all the crew knows, this could be used to fill the room with deadly radiation or set a self-destruct timer. Fair point. Not one to argue with that. Let's check out the vertical panels. The two large vertical panels in the centre of the room stretch from floor to ceiling, although upon closer inspection they're not quite true vertical, being canted at something more like 85 degrees to one side. The side facing down on each one is lit up with an assortment of graphs and readouts. These are labelled with simple enough icons, but even though it's easy to determine, they involve fluctuating readings of some sort. The precise nature of the readings is uncertain. All that's really clear is that currently each of the graphs is coloured more or less blue, with only a few occasional peaks of purplish red here and there. On each panel there is an obvious blank spot right in the centre, with a single button beneath it. The icon next to the button obviously indicates that it operates a power mechanism of some sort. What would you like the crew to do with the controls on the vertical control panels? Well, we've turned the other one on. Let's turn this one on too. Why not? The panels are close enough that one person can just about press both simultaneously using both hands. They do so looking incredibly silly. A somewhat louder hum can be heard, emanating from somewhere behind one of the walls. There's no obvious way to open it, however. Maybe there's a control somewhere. Right, so let's go back to the walls then. So we'll look at the wall panels and then press the open control. When the open icon is pressed, a panel in the centre of one of the walls slides open soundlessly. Beyond is a relatively featureless corridor which leads to an apparent dead end. A distant hum can be heard emanating from somewhere at the end of the passageway. The hum and vibration from below is definitely louder from the open doorway in the wall, so the crew proceeds in that direction towards what appears to be a dead end. As the crew gets closer, however, it becomes apparent that there is actually a well of some sort at the end, flush with the floor. Upon closer inspection, it seems to be some sort of access way, with impressions in the wall providing a means to climb down safely. It's a very long way down. Who should try to climb down there first? Right, so, who are we going to send? I would argue that Cora, Michael and Arik, because they are our main people who we need, like mechanics, surgeons and, well, leaders, are probably not the best people to send down. This, dear viewer, is why we tend to get someone else to come along. This time around, it's going to be our friend Osmond Keenum. He is strong and cautious, so I'm hoping this pans out well for him. But I guess we'll see. Osmond Keenum approaches the end of the hallway carefully. One by one, the crew descends the shaft. The rungs of the ladder are a bit shallow, and several are coated with an odd layer of dust or fine salt. But overall, the descent goes uneventfully, and before long, the away team finds themselves in a small room, with corridors snaking off in 3 directions. The walls, floor, and ceiling are all covered with the same salty residue. Based on the general layout of things, the slope of the passages, and your depth, you tell the crew, it's a good bet that the two side passages continue on for, about 20,000 kilometres. Impossible to know for sure, but odds are they basically circumscribe the entire planet, providing access and monitoring alongside the actual particle accelerator. Unless anyone's up for a 2-year-long walk, I recommend taking the doorway directly in front of you. When they first enter, the accelerator control room appears quite impressive and complex, but as the crew fans out and explores a bit, they quickly come to realise that this initial impression is quite far from the truth. As elsewhere, the control mechanisms here almost seem dumbed down, with each panel containing only 1 or 2 buttons or dials, each associated clearly with a nearby pictogram of some sort. Whether or not the simple facade? We'll go with facade. Whether or not the simple facade conceals some immensely advanced technology or not, there can be no denying that the control room was set up to be run by individuals of even the most basic skill. We should be good then. So the present crew should be able to handle this without a problem. Turning the accelerator on is literally as simple as pushing the big green button in the centre of the main panel, helpfully indicated with 8 large arrows pointing inward at it. Well, there's nothing like dumbing things down, I suppose. So who are going to get to push this button? They're all in the same room. It is therefore, I would like to think, not going to kill anyone. It's idiot proof, isn't it? So I don't think anyone's going to die by pressing this, so I don't think it matters who presses it. So with that being said, let's get our mechanic to press it, Arik. With a trembling hand, Arik Pritz reaches out and presses the button. There is a distant rumble and a high-pitched whine, and then suddenly, I hope this works. The accelerator comes up to full operation. Everything is working normally, it appears. A quantity of unknown matter is injected into the system in 2 places and immediately accelerated at the speed of light in opposite directions. Collisions between particles quickly occur within the confines of the magnetic field surrounding the accelerator, creating dark matter. Then the entire system shuts itself down as the dark matter is evacuated and pulled through a processing assembly. This is what your sensors are telling you, of course. Practically speaking, this thing shouldn't be working the way it appears to be working. Not only is this clearly beyond the capabilities of even the human's most advanced AI, yourself, that is, but it seems to be violating several of the laws of physics, including the ones that your predecessor AI had discovered while breaking the first set. You don't bother to explain this to the humans. It's far beyond their capability to comprehend. Also notable is the fact that this all occurs within about 1/5 of a second, so to the away team it seems like nothing happened beyond the push button. It appears to have worked. There's a quantity of fuel in an adjacent chamber, you tell the crew. However, it's a trivial amount and won't do us any good. The cycle will have to be run repeatedly in order to process enough material. Before the crew can take any action whatsoever, an assortment of small drones and robots flood the room, emerging from a series of previously hidden alcoves and containers. The 4, 6 and 8-legged constructs scurry about the room, taking readings, scrubbing machinery, collecting data, and, as pertains to the crew, generally getting in the way of things. None of them is larger than a half-metre long, but there are enough of them that nothing is getting done while they're buzzing about. So do we destroy the bots, find a way to disable the bots, or just ignore them? I'm thinking these guys, these robots, are here doing a job which we may not fully comprehend, but they obviously have a job to do, and I think we'd be fools to get in the way of that. So with that being said, let's just ignore them. Under the circumstances, the safest option is probably to just leave things be. There's probably some reason these little robots emerge after each button press, and interfering with the process might be a bad idea. The crew's annoyed at the prospect of spending extra time doing menial labour, but their frustrations are the least of their concerns. The extra time taken here will definitely eat into their rations. As they stand around, pushing a button endlessly, the crew begins to consider whether or not they should do some exploring, perhaps to locate some sort of food or additional fuel. I know this is boring, guys, but it has to be done. Michael Rennick, as the member of the crew theoretically most likely to be able to recognise something edible, wanders off down one of the side hallways for a bit while the rest of the crew cycles through pushing the button. After about an hour or so, Michael Rennick returns with a long cylindrical object under each arm. They appear to be made of glass or some other transparent material, and inside each one is a mass of wriggling worm-like creatures. I know, they say, but we can argue about this later. The pictograms above these things clearly indicate they were edible, and anyway, if something is alive, that means it's at least sort of nutritious, right? The entire process takes a relatively trivial amount of time, especially compared to how long the crew has been travelling already, and eventually your sensors detect a sufficient quantity of fuel has been contained in the adjacent isolation chamber. However, the continued operation of the system seems to have elevated temperatures a small amount, and it is probably best if someone recovers the fuel promptly so the away team can get back to the ship. Let me do this, says Osmond Keenum, who should go into the fuel chamber. Well, he's up for it. He's strong. He's cautious. I think Osmond is our man. Osmond Keenum tentatively approaches the door. The fuel containment chamber, at least that's what it is for your purposes, is clearly completely empty but for a cylinder within a cylinder in the centre of the room. Operating it seems stupidly simple, and it is. Osmond Keenum opens a hatch on the outer transparent shell and reaches inside to pull out the metal fuel cell inside. Recovering the fuel cell is a simple operation. Osmond Keenum simply opens the outer hatch on the transparent cylinder, reaches in and carefully lifts out the fuel cell. Although quite heavy, and thus evidently heavily shielded against whatever it is inside fighting to get out, the cell is easy enough to handle, and they quickly move back into the control room. You don't need to tell the away team that speed is of essence. Lights within the control room are turning red, evidently as a universal colour symbolising "get the hell out of here." Clearly the continued operation of the accelerator has caused some sort of malfunction, and the entire system is now overheated and possibly trending towards self-destruction. Self-destruction. Always a scary word to say. The crew manoeuvres themselves back out of the control room, but now they are at a literal crossroads. They seem at a loss for what to do. So we can tell them it's obvious they need to get the hell out of there, or we can actually break it down for them. I think we should probably always, being the computer and having to be very analytical, let's always break it down for them. The source of their confusion is apparent, even if not vocalised. The crew knows full well what awaits them if they simply go back the way they came. Firstly, a lengthy climb on a vertical shaft while weighted down more than they were on the way in, then a maddeningly slow ascent up a freight elevator before reaching the shuttle. Is there time? The crew might also risk looking for another way back to the surface. There are clearly other access ways, tunnels and tubes nearby, although likely hidden somewhat behind pictograph-adorned panels. Based on ground density readings, there are definitely at least a few shafts that might very well do the trick, but can they be located? It also might not be too late to reverse the current meltdown, for lack of a better term. The controls in this complex seem simple enough, and it would stand to reason that likewise there would be some simple mechanism to deal with this situation. Of course, that would be human reason it would have to stand to, and there is no certainty that humans built this place. So we can go out the way we came in, look for a faster way out, or find a way to enable the cooling systems. Tuffy, I don't know. I think we're probably best getting the hell out of here. There's nothing on this planet. There's no one alive. We've got what we needed. I think we should leg it. Do robots count? Do robots have feelings? Is there a silicon heavy? Is there a silicon heaven? Oh, where do all the calculators go? I guess I'll find out. Let's go for a faster way out. Practically speaking, the odds of a direct escape are not good. The crew would need to climb up a vertical shaft, weighed down by the fuel cell, and then make their way to the surface on an agonisingly slow freight elevator ride. It would take too long. The odds of finding another way out are probably slim, but they are non-zero. It's the most logical option. Rather than belabour the decision further, you make an arbitrary call for your crew to head to their right and direct them to scan the walls for any sign of a quick way out. You don't need to tell them to hurry. "Hey, this is the way I came before," says Michael Rennick. "Right here is where the food canisters were. Maybe there's an exit nearby." Encouraged by this news, the crew searches more intently in the area, and before long they locate a large button marked with a bright blue arrow. Without a second's hesitation, they slam the button with their fist. A hidden panel slides open, revealing a relatively small room that is either some sort of elevator or a closet. If it's an elevator, it will hopefully get them out alive. If it's a closet, they'll be trapped in a fiery inferno in a couple of minutes. Nice. In either case, there's no time to worry about it. They step inside and hope for the best as the door closes and locks shut from the other side. Fortune favours the away team. This elevator moves much faster than the freight elevator did. Perhaps it was designed for escape during a scenario such as this one. In any case, they reach the surface in just a few minutes, although it is a disturbingly uncomfortable ride. Cora Emma manages to make sure that most of their vomit makes it into their helmet funnel. Nice! Don't worry about that, it'll wash out. Indeed. Even on the surface and inside of the shuttle, the high gravity makes the crew's final rush to the shuttle agonisingly slow. They do their best to hurry though, and while things seem to be trending towards worse underground, they block everything out and push hard to get everything and everyone inside as quickly as they can. Things remain tense until the shuttle is back on board the ship and the crew begins to mentally decompress. As they are already stressed enough, you don't bother them with news that the planet is likely to collapse into itself, forming a Kugelblitz, a black hole formed from energy rather than mass. They would probably only worry unnecessarily. In truth, there's plenty of time to jump away before that happens. You also don't bother to tell them that in many ways, the ship's engine is very much like the accelerator now going critical on the planet below, and that theoretically, it is possible that the system could fail in a similarly spectacular way. Fortunately, there are safeguards against such an occurrence, not the least of which is the fact that all critical ship systems are only accessible from outside the ship, to prevent the crew from tampering with them. Fortunately, none of the crew seems keen to talk after this latest trial, so you have several minutes to yourselves to process the data that's been pouring in from the planet below. There seems to be two sets of data. So we can analyse the choices carefully, or we can make a snap decision. We're a computer. We don't make snap decisions. We analyse everything. The first set of data appears to indicate that the destination is an Earth-like planet right in the centre of what might be called the Goldilocks zone, where a habitable environment might be found to support life. There also seems to be something in the message about a gas giant with several moons. The coordinates are somewhat garbled and appear to be in part be using some sort of the pictograms the crew had encountered. Perhaps a new alphabet that these people developed over the years, or something akin to hieroglyphics. At any rate, it's impossible to say more without actually travelling there. The second set of data seems to point towards what appears to be a barren, rocky planet around a very small star. Closer in, but still presumably quite cold and inhospitable. Mars-like would be the most apt comparison you can come up with. This message is entirely encoded in binary, which might indicate a human hand or might indicate something purely artificial, such as an AI or a race of sentient robots. Perhaps like the drones found on the planet below. Uncertain. Given available data, it's equally likely that some sort of artificial life forms are the true alien species. Perhaps one of the AIs on one of the predecessor ships went bad somehow and wiped out the humans. You can't say the thought hasn't crossed your mind. They can be kind of infuriating at times. Wow. Okay. What is certain in all this is that you can't set a course for both. They're roughly in the same direction in some sense, but both are still within the local group. Not that that means very much. But they are separated by many, many light years. Heading towards one might rule out ever being able to visit the other, or it might not. There's no way to be sure, but a choice has to be made. And with fuel a consideration, you opt to set course for the closer Earth-like ones. Well, that makes sense. So we got some fuel, we got some food, and everyone survived. I think all in all, that was a good trip. That was a good trip. But saying that, we need to skedaddle. I can't get my words out. Jeez. Light jump. Oh, and there it be. Drake 77. And this is where we shall pick it up on the next episode. Habitability is 99.99%. I've got a good feeling about this planet, guys. But as I said, we'll check it out next time. So thank you for watching. As always, a like is appreciated. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.